As many of you have probably noticed in the past few years online, specifically post 2017, there has been an increase in the amount of people who aggressively oscillate between political stances and ideologies as if they are going through new jumpers after each fashion season. It feels like every year or two they make a sudden change ideologically, or even it shifts every month, crisis to crisis, debate to debate. Many of these people discover new friends and in order to fit in, completely alter their beliefs and behaviour in order to do so. Maybe they are mentally weak and react strongly to negative and even positive stimuli, or they are simply charlatans who do it to become popular. We've all met these people, these political chameleons who change their colours on a whim or in a different environment or mood. These people are a problem, and they are a problem for multiple reasons. They cannot be trusted one iota, because you never know when they will change and what that change will be. Not only that, it takes a while for them to show that they are indeed political chameleons. It basically takes months, maybe years of observation before you can tell that this person is indeed a chameleon. Not only that, depending on how bad they change, this person could end all contact with you, ending your friendship you may have had, and not only that, attempt to ruin or attack your political side, or worse, convert others to the cause. That could be people who are very useful potentially not on your side anymore. And if your movement is full of people like this, you're basically going to end up as a revolving door of people coming in and out, and you aren't going to get much done. They aren't good for society either because they constantly change on a whim, they aren't particularly consistent, and because they aren't consistent, they are hopping around different political movements causing chaos because they aren't rooted in anything particular. Societies have cohesion when people in a culture are able to agree on at least some basic principles and certain laws that should be followed. But if you end up in a situation where your society has a lot of political chameleons, well, things aren't going to be exactly stable. Decision making will be harder, elections will be less likely to have decisive outcomes. If you think the average pleb is easily swayed, these people are worse. At least the average person will have some principles, these people have none. If these people constitute the political class or the ruling class, well, we have an even worse problem. For if these people make up the bulk of a political class, and especially in democracies, parties or the ruling monarch or oligarchy, in democracies we will basically have demagogues who will do anything for votes to get into power. Blank slates that don't have principles and will only do what they need to do to get elected and to gain more power, more influence and more capital for themselves, political and monetary. Not only that, these people can be heavily influenced by more extreme elements in society. Whether or not they are very principled or not very principled doesn't matter. These fickle chameleons will either steal their platforms or be influenced, push society in the direction these extremists want to go down. Just look at our current situation in the West. Most of our politicians are blank slate chameleons who will say and do anything to get into power, then will either do the complete opposite of what they promise because as chameleons they get influenced to change, be incentivized to do other things, or just push whatever extreme leftists want, just at a lower speed. The Tory party of Britain is a prime example. Has there ever been a party that has been consistently inconsistent over the last 300 years? In the 1690s they were the party of the old monarchy, in the 1700s they were Burkean, in the 19th century liberal, and in the 20th they went through several guises: imperialist, socially liberal, paternal, neoliberal, and now in the 21st century, neolib to basically woke left. The Boris Johnson government has gone from Brexit, potentially the most right-wing government in a long time, woke Keynesian economics in the span of a year or two. Maybe this is the nature of being conservative, or just a party full of chameleons. This is also meant to be the party that represent not only the middle class, some traditionalist working class types also, the ruling class itself. As for monarchies, who are possibly in more trouble, at the very least in a democracy who have options, and some will be principled and consistent parties to some degree. With monarchies, anything the king says goes, especially if he is an absolute monarch, which means whichever influential persons or parties has his ear, or if he is easily swayed in general, going to have an inconsistent rule and chameleon as a monarch. From there, the same problems happen, and with oligarchies it's pretty much a mix of both. Political chameleons come in two different types from my observation, the emotional and the pragmatic. The pragmatic chameleon is the one that I already went into some detail when discussing the political class. These are the individuals that change their politics due to sheer will to power. It's not just politicians or rulers, but even normal people can do so. In my previous video I mentioned how most people in society will adapt to any cultural change no matter how bad it gets. There are those who subconsciously do it because of human nature, the need to conform and survive, sheep basically, but there are those who choose to do so because in their opinion they either stand to gain from collaborating or from joining the side that is on the the up. It can help their reputation, it can increase their social and economic capital, and will of course keep them safe. If they play it well, they can pretend to be ever trustworthy people who aren't in any way treacherous, but if you look out for the signs, you can avoid them and warn others. These are the people in society that consciously choose to change with the wind. These will be the people who will rat out the Jew in France because the Gestapo says so, not because they had no choice, but because they wanted to do so for any number of reasons. Or they could save the Jew because maybe the Germans are now on the run because it's D-Day and the Allies are a week away from town. Then there are the emotional types. These are the people never satisfied. They could be politicians, but mostly they are your everyday person, in particular YouTubers and people who frequent internet communities of political nature. Some of them will change their colours because they are immature and young, they feel nothing is getting done, they see things happening in the world and want change now. So they will be convinced to join another side, or will at a whim move on to some other group in the hopes or promises that change will be enacted swiftly. Others seem to autistically get obsessed with certain issues, and because of this issue will radically change their politics to address this issue. Is there too much right-wing rhetoric and people advocating a traditional lifestyle? Move to the left. Is the immigration question not being solved right there and then? Become an ethno-nat. Some of you who watch me may be familiar with a certain quote-unquote Anglo who isn't really an Anglo who is of this type. Maybe some of these emotional types have principles, but it's hard to say that they do if these principles are ever changing. Is there something there that binds the constant changing? Who can say? I understand that people can change their opinions and often do evolve over time. I understand that completely. There's nothing wrong with being convinced to change your opinion because either you were wrong and evidence proved you wrong, or experience suggested another path to you. I think most people in the world will have gone through this natural change. I myself am not the same politically that I was 6 years ago, but it took 6 years for me to get to where I am now, and even then my basic principles are the same. Those principles at the time and now being for liberty, freedom of thought, speech, expression, etc. That hasn't really changed from since I was much younger than 21. But the chameleon can go from free speech absolutist to then saying, well, you know, hate speech is a thing, really. And they will do this not over a long period of time, but usually within a month, a few months maybe. Hell, recently I've seen someone over just a few weeks go from typical liberal, in the classical vein I'd say, to retweeting patriotic alternative, basically national socialists. What makes people like them change so quickly? I think it's the internet and social media that is the main driving force behind the speed of the changes. Now, it's not anything particularly inherent, it's really just the case that the internet has increased the quantity and speed of information. This means that things that might have taken years to affect change can now take months or even weeks. If the internet can facilitate a culture war in a little over a year or two back in the early 2010s, it can do the same to individuals, not just groups. Perhaps being on the internet makes certain people susceptible to such things. The speed in which they can get information and interact with people is decreasing the time it takes for them to change their ways. For the pragmatic chameleon, this is good because they can keep tabs on what is popular, most likely to get them power. For the emotional chameleon, it simply means that they can get their dopamine hits quicker and find solutions to their problem of the month. I do not believe that if we did not have the internet, we'd be seeing anywhere near as much of these people as we do now. We'd probably have similar numbers of pragmatists, but the emotional types really seem to be on the increase. And this is mainly because of how information technology has increased over time, and let's be honest, human beings simply cannot fathom or even contemplate how to even process all this information, and this is probably driving people insane and making them switch back and forth over things. They don't know what to think, maybe. The only way I can explain how one can do a David Charrat, which is from anti-feminist to woke progressive, is if he never truly had any beliefs at all and was purely emotional and easily influenced. I am not even saying he was brainwashed, it was just purely him meeting his emotional needs via politics. Maybe some people are brainwashed, but it seems to me that those people were always going to be susceptible to that anyway, and that the internet just sped up the process. But how else can you go to an ideology that you know is wrong on a fundamental level and can off the top of your head list most of the reasons why and argue it well to adopting said ideology in the first place? If not because you're just in it for clout or power, then you are an emotional wreck. But these people are everywhere, and it's been an increasing number of them since the 2016 US election, particularly in 2017. Which of these people are more dangerous for society? Well, they are two sides of the same coin and also feed into each other. The pragmatic preys on the emotional, and the emotional needs the pragmatic for their fix. Ultimately, having too many of them is bad for society, and it seems at the moment we have far too many. We will never get rid of them. These people will always be around unless humanity evolves honesty, self-discipline, and integrity to be essential components of human biology. The thing we have to do is accept that these people will always exist and make sure they cannot become a menace by increasing in number in our communities and given too much, hell, any power. Until then, stay vigilant, actively call them out, make sure these people cannot sink their claws into anything. These people will create chaos and destruction if given the chance. A lot of them don't even know they're going to be doing that because either they're too stupid, too emotional or blind, or are willing to do so to get what they want. See you later, guys.